Hello everyone. Yes, well, the time now is actually 9 p.m. I'm at home, so pardon me for wearing so casual. Uh, well, doesn't really matter how I wear, right? You all should focus on the lecture notes. Yeah, okay, right. So here we are. Going to talk about chapter 10 on swap part 2, right? In our last chapter, we talk about the swap, okay, on interest rate and some other swap, right? So today we're going to take a look at the commodity swap, right? Um, so what's a commodity swap? It's basically focusing on obviously the commodity, yeah, right? So you are basically swapping a commodity with the price of the commodity index, right? So that's something that we will try to talk about, right? So basically, it's still an agreement between two party on the swapping arrangement, right? So in this case, it's a swapping of commodity plus the cash flow, the price of the commodity. So let's take a look at one simple example on the airline, right? So we did talk about this airline industry before. So the airline basically they uses a lot of fuel, right? The fuel basically can cost up to 35% of the airline operating cost, right? Can you imagine to fly a plane? 35% goes to paying for the petrol, right? So it's very important to basically hedge this petroleum price, right? Because every time the price fluctuation can seriously have an impact on the bottom line of the airline industries, right? So if you look at the current COVID crisis, it does really have a big impact on all the airline industries, right? Uh, so it's pretty bad. If you look at the COVID, where all the airlines couldn't fly, right? All the different countries start uh, having banned all the foreign tourists from coming in, right? So you can see all the airlines. Right? You'll be surprised if you go to Changi Airport, you see all the airlines, all the planes are all parking there. So basically, when you park there, basically it's not generating any revenue, right? And it's so quiet over at the jewels, right? So you can see there's a big impact. So nevertheless, let's come back to this case studies on this airline. So airlines in the past, right, when times are good, they are really committed to buying jet fuel for a long term period, right? Because flying plane, you need petrol, and you would want to fix the price of the petrol. Very important. So they could be fixing the price for the next 10 months, 1 year, 2 year, etc. Right? Because in any airline industries, some of the revenues are pretty fixed. Because how many flight you fly, how many passenger plane can take, right? And how many basically that you can calculate equals to how many ticket sales you can actually sell, right? And most of the ticket sales are rather fixed price. So in a way, you can determine the revenue of the airline industries, right? So the only thing that can fluctuate tremendously is actually the fuel price. So they will jolly well like to fix the petrol price, right? So that they can eliminate some of this floating price risk. So airline essentially they can enter into a swap contract for 2 years, for 6 months, right? Depending on which is their comfort period that they want to fix the price, right? Or how they see the price of the petrol, whether it's moving up, or trending down, right? So they can determine whether they want to fix the price for 6 months, 1 month, or 1 year, 2 years, etc. So swap contract relate to amount, right? The amount of oil which the airline can and purchase, right, and take physical delivery of the petrol, right, for their plane. Okay, so basically it's like entering into some energy swap agreement, right? Some energy swap agreement. So let's take this scenario further, right? So here we have a diagram that basically help you to illustrate and see the whole scenario better. So you got this airline industry, so they call this the XYZ, right? So the XYZ can actually go ahead and buy the petrol from the three big industry countries, right? The US, they actually export lots of gold, no, petrol, right? The next is actually the Saudi Arabia, right, where they basically sell oil, and also they also, like Russia, right? Russia also export oil. So these are basically the three big countries that that basically produce or sell oil. So now you have this company. Okay, so you buy, basically you have a sales transactions for buying petrol over here. Then now you have got this bank, right? You can actually work out a swap agreement with this company called XYZ or AYZ or any financial institute. So there you have a swap agreement. So you can basically peg uh, the floating price index of the oil, for example, right? So you can basically uh, use this swap, this floating price over here, right? And then you can basically swap with this use the same floating price. Okay, you pass on. Okay, so basically what you do is you basically pass on the floating price to AYZ, right? And you have this swap agreement that you agreed that to pay this AYZ a fixed price for the petrol, right? So what you are doing is you actually pass on the risk, the floating price risk, to AYZ. So the AYZ will basically take care of the floating price of the oil. Okay, so whatever how the oil fluctuate is no concern to this airline industries, because the airline industries has actually gone into the swap agreement with AYZ, where they just simply have to pay every month or every quarterly a fixed price, and the AYZ will basically take care of the footing. So the AYZ is basically taking on all the risks. Okay, so this is how things would goes about, right, in some of the industries. So here you have another diagram that basically shows the airline industry. Example at SIA, they do like 1,000 flight every day or every other days, right? So you have this profit oil price that basically fluctuate up and down, right? So oil price fluctuate up and down over the few months, right? So you can see March, June, September. So it fluctuate over the months. But you can see that just now we talked about the air ticket sales, which is actually a fixed line. The air ticket sales price is actually pretty fixed, because the ticket sales you don't fluctuate that much. You always have a fixed price, fixed ticket price. So here you have a straight line, and there you can see the cost minus the sales will basically give you the profits, right? Isn't it? Here this will give you the profits. So you can see that when the gold price goes down, you have a bigger profit. When the gold price goes up, you have a smaller profits. So you can see here, right? So it makes doing business a bit difficult when you have a wide range, wide variance of profits, right? Certain months you earn a lot of profit, certain months you earn little. That have a big impact in how you want to do or even expand your businesses, because you might not know the next few months you're going to have lots of profits or less profits. So what most company will try to do is they will try to fix the cost. You can see the dotted line over here and the profits. line here. So that make it more linear, and then it make it more predictable in terms of the revenue that can be generated by the airline industries. And then from there, they can actually make better plan to acquire more planes, for example, to acquire more manpower, more pilots, more whatever, right? So it make business projection, business planning much easier, right? So that's what most people want to go ahead and try to do. So here is another illustration to basically tell you that what happens if oil price goes up or goes down. So let's start off with same thing. It's the same scenario where XYZ is actually the airline industries and the AYZ is actually the financial institute, right? So they have this sales agreement on swap agreement that says that the airline industry, whatever happens, I will just pay you for the next 1 year $10, right, per barrel for the oil price. I'll just pay whatever happens to the price goes up or goes down. I'll just pay you, okay, pay AYZ $10, right? So when what happen? Let's say when what happen when the oil price goes down? Huh? When the oil price goes down to $8, XYZ will still continue to have to pay $10 per barrel, right? For to this company. So when the oil price is $8, which means what? $2 will go to AYZ, right? So since they take on the risk of price fluctuation, this is where AYZ become more favorable to them. They got $2 extra, right? They get a net profit of $2, right? While XYZ still enjoy, doesn't matter the price, oil price will go down, but they have gone into a swap agreement, so they stick on with the price, right, that they have to pay for the petrol, right? So what happens if the oil price goes the other way? It went up to $11, right? So XYZ, the airline industry, they have got the swap agreement. They will continue to pay the petrol price at $10 per barrel. So who's going to bear the extra $1? This is where the AYZ will come in, right? The financial institute, the local bank, whatever that they tie up with, because of the swap agreement, right? And the price has actually gone up by $1. So the AYZ will have to help XYZ, the airline industry, to fork out the extra $1, right? So it worked out nicely that the net effect of the XYZ is they will always just pay $10, regardless whether oil price has gone up or gone down. So that is the energy swap agreement that has actually helped the airline industry in securing a fixed cost, and that will have a good impact on their fixed revenue, a more predictable revenue, right? So now we move on to another scenario, which is actually a double swap. Double swap actually is nothing much. It's just you swap 2 times instead of swapping 1 time, right? So for example, like this is a market maker. They basically try to do a double swap, right? So they have one swap that they basically swap a floating, let's say a floating price, right, for a fixed rate. Then after that, they basically pass on to this, right, and they use that fixed rate and then swap a floating rate, okay, with another parties, right? This is like doing another party. It's just like I swap my iPhone with your Samsung phone, right? Then after I got my Samsung phone, I swap with another person with his iPhone, with another person with his iPhone. So it ran actually back to square one, right? But basically, I could be doing a double swap to basically try to profit from the spread, from the differences, right? So example, maybe iPhone, I do a swap using my iPhone 9. Okay, I swap with your Samsung, let's say Samsung 9, right? iPhone 9 swap with an iPhone 9, Samsung 9, and then just assuming I'm not too sure whether it's a Samsung 9, but anyway, so I got a Samsung 9. Okay, then I go and swap with somebody with his iPhone 10. right? I swap with a better range, right? Who knows that guy wanted to swap with me? You all might think that he's an idiot or whatever, too stupid enough to swap with me to with a better phone. But in any case, this could happen, right? Because he might need somehow you rather want to need a Samsung 9, and then you can see that from a iPhone 9 that I used to have, now I actually got a better phone, which is iPhone 10. So so there's some value that I actually have achieved, right? So but nevertheless, it's just might not be a very good example, but basically it's just to tell you that I can basically try to do a swap 2 time, right? By the market maker who basically just trying to profit something from it, right? Just to try to profit something from the spread in the both transactions. Commodity swap. Okay, so there's also this thing called the plain vanilla agreement, which just purely swapping of the whole transactions, getting into the whole transaction, not because they want to take delivery of the physical actual commodity. They are like really not concerned about the actual uh, the delivery of the physical good. Like just now we talk about the petrol, right? The fuel. Not well, they are basically just like a speculator, right? Just swapping just for the financial benefits or the financial gain that they can have, right? So it's just simply a simple swap without taking delivery of the actual goods. So it really doesn't matter what underlying and that they basically are doing, but basically they are just trying to square off some of their position, or basically just trying to get some gain out from it. Right, now we move on to equity swap. Right, so equity swap is basically an agreement again between the two parties about swapping of stocks, stock indices, stock index, stocks, right? Basically stocks. So you have got this uh, people who want to buy foreign stocks, right? So how do they go about doing that? They can actually do a equity swap. Like for example, let's take a look at this example. It's always easier to see with an example. So you have this U.S. portfolio manager, right? So he's a fund manager, U.S. station in U.S., right? And maybe he's looking at diversifying his the risk, her risk, right? So I've been trading on US stocks. So maybe I got some money. I want to diversify. I don't want to put all the eggs in the same marketplace. I want to diversify and then try out, experiment some other foreign market. Like in this case, she wants to try out the German market, right? She wants to buy some German blue chip, right? Blue chip are usually referring to those stocks and shares that are quite stable or quite big in capitalizations, right? So she wanted to invest in some of these foreign market, right? And she might allocate a certain percentage of her portfolio, a fund portfolio, in some of these foreign stocks. So what can she do, right? So what she can do is, of course, she can actually approach her German counterpart in the stock exchange, or she can, or fund manager in Germany, fund manager to do some of these things, or he can actually approach the financial institute or bank, right, to help her to do some of this equity swap. It could be also be any of the swap bank or commercial investment bank that basically specialize in this swap deal. So this here we have one example. Let's say this is her, right? So in US, and then you have a German counterpart, right? Somewhere. Just take for example, another foreign right? So German counterpart. So they basically swap the indices, right? So she can swap the SPI or S&P 500 index, right, with a DAX, another stock index, right? So basically, I buy a Microsoft shares, right, in exchange with a local share like SIA shares, so we can actually do a swap, using equivalent kind of a capital, right, or principal amount, right. So you can swap the equal amount, right, to so that I can actually get hold of some of the foreign stocks, right. So hopefully you can see what's happening over here. Basically, it's a exchange of different foreign stocks, right? So why do people do that, right? Of course, there are many reasons, right? Let's take a look at the summary first. So the summaries, what we have been looking at the various swap, right? So far, we actually look at 4 different type of swap, right? In the earlier 2 chapters of part 1 of a swap, we basically look at the interest rate swap, right? So you can see that there was a swapping of a fixed rate with a floating rate, or it could also be a floating with a floating, or fixed with another fixed rate, whichever is more favorable, right? So you can see there's a company actually do interest rate swap, right? Then there's also the currency swap. So you can borrow better ringgit and I can borrow better Sing dollars, so we can actually do a swap in the currency exchange. Excuse me. Then we can also do so in swap part 2, we look at commodity swap, right? Swapping of the petrol price with the pricing index, right? So you also swap in basically focusing on the commodity, the crude oil, the crops, could be gold, and then anything. The last one, what we just seen earlier is equity, right? Basically shares, stocks, indices. Oops, hope I didn't get any of those covert. God bless me. So fixed and floating rate swap, right? So basically you try to swap and try to profit on some of these rate of returns in the swap, right? So why people go through this kind of a swap, right? So one of the reason is they want to uh, lower the funding cost, right? So because sometimes if I were to, let's say, buy a foreign stock, it can be more expensive. It can also be more complicated, right? So just like I want to buy Singapore, I want to buy US stock. It might not be that straightforward. I want to trade in US market. It might not be that straightforward, right? It involves a lot of currency exchange, etc. So it might be easier for me to get my US counterpart to basically do some stock trading for me, right? So that might be easier. So they actually offer some flexibility, right? And also it offers some insurance as well as a reduction in those market risk as well as exchange risk, right? So that's why this swap agreement is getting better, and is one of those good derivatives that people actually adopt and use, right? So it's not just lowering of fund cost, because you get somebody else actually to do it for you, and better the local people to do it, and they could also be doing it at a better rate, the domestic rate, right? Just like what we have seen, right? A local company is able to trade cheaper or even borrow at a cheaper rate than a foreigner, right? Or foreign companies, right? So it's always easier to do trade in a local market, right? So that call for some of these swap agreement or benefits. So what's the disadvantage of swap? Well, you can see that swap can actually be quite complicated, and it's really truly non-customizable. I mean, truly customizable, and it's truly non-standards, right? So just now I was wrong about the non-customizable, but basically the contract is basically not the standard kind that we look at in the exchange, right? A swap is usually very customized, very personalized, depending on how you want to do the swap. So it can be quite complex, right? So generally it's not tradable in the stock exchange, right? Unlike future and option contract, that basically is tradable more in the stock exchange, easily done with the clearing house. So swap is like the forward contract that there is certain risk, right, involved in the other party that can actually go on default, okay, or might not be able to meet their scheduled payment. So here we have another summary table that has a comparison between the future options. Right, option will be covering in the next chapter, so you will get to know more about options, right? So, but generally, this is just a very quick look at the differences between the future and the swap, right? So again, the swap is like the forward, it's over the counter, it's customized, it's usually done by big MNC companies or banks, right? And since it's always privately negotiated, the both parties usually they see each other, they know each other, right? Unlike like you trade in the stock exchange, usually you don't know who's your buyer, who's your seller, right? Everything is taken care by the exchange, so you just simply sell at whatever price you want and buy whatever price that you can, right? So clearinghouse will basically make sure that you guarantee a trade and there's less credit exposure, right? So in comparison to swap, you have more of those credit risk exposure, right? Because you cool that hopefully that wrap up your understanding on this swap agreement, and we will move on to our last derivative, right, on options. So I will sign out from here and have a good day. Thank you very much for your attention. Yes, signing off.